Bisky. Good morning. This is Sally Morgan, physical therapist, craniosacral therapist, and Tellington T-Touch practitioner for animals and people. This is Tristan. He's a Corgi, and we're here for an episode of Conversations with a Corgi. So we're going to continue our talk about behavior and food because there are so much to say about it. We may be talking about this for a while, so today's going to be another one. So one of the things that we did not mention before, we talked about it generally in terms of inflammation, but there's been a couple of studies lately that have shown that behavior in shelters can be impacted by the level of protein in the diet. Now, when you're working in a shelter, your dogs are eating whatever food people give you, and that's cheap. But another issue is managing behavior in the shelters. So one of the interesting things going on here is how to manage your shelter behavior and not be bankrupt trying to feed your dogs better food. So there's been several studies about this, particularly because in shelters it's pretty easy to run a study. We might have noticed ourselves when we have Thanksgiving dinner, we feel comfortable and relaxed, and we also are tired. And so what's that from? Tryptophan in the turkey. Tryptophan is a precursor for serotonin in the brain. It makes you happy and relaxed. If you are not getting enough serotonin from getting enough tryptophan, you are stressed and aggressive. So what does that come from? Carbohydrates. So it's really important to make sure that your dog's level of protein in their diet is not too much, leading to aggression. Or issues with that. The other thing that we can think about in humans that food can affect is our blood sugar levels. So one of the things to regulate blood sugar in humans that people don't always remember is cinnamon. Pancreas loves cinnamon. It keeps your insulin from spiking and dropping. It keeps you at a nice steady state. One of my friends had a dog with diabetes, kept him on cinnamon his whole life, and he did very well, and that is not one of the things that led to problems for him. So blood sugar levels going up and down, we've all been there, out shopping with the kids, and we had lunch about 100 years ago. We've got to be home for dinner. The kids' blood sugar is low, they're screaming. Your blood sugar is low, you're crabby, which makes more screaming. You're in this terrible cycle. The other thing that we see in dogs is that food can influence their level of anxiety and their activity level for weeks and months after the diet changes or a diet that's not good for them. So, we need to think about what we're feeding in terms of how that's affecting the neurotransmitters in the brain. And, one of the things that we know about is that people have dogs with anxiety. One of the things that happens in behavior problems in dogs is general anxiety, separation anxiety, defensive aggression, obsessive compulsive behaviors. All of these things are common in shelter dogs and dogs rescued from shelters. And in fact, some of our own pets. No, he's a good boy. So, many dogs have these issues. One study said 3,500 dogs in British Columbia, 2/3 of them had some level of separation anxiety for the first 3 months. Well, why wouldn't you when you've just been rescued from the streets? But you can have an effect on that by changing the neurotransmitters in the brain. You want to get more serotonin in the brain. And you can do that with food. So we've looked at, obviously lactating moms, puppies, breeding dogs, they want a high level of protein. And people talk about a high protein diet for a dog, saying that that's a more natural condition. Your dog will have more lean body mass and will be more satisfied with what they're eating, feeling fuller. You won't get that dog cruising the table looking for food. And if your dog is working, my dog's walking 2 miles a day. He is a little dog and he's an older dog, so he needs a level of protein that can sustain that. He's walking at least 2 miles a day, actually. But Certain dog breeds are predisposed to liver and kidney disease, urinary stones, and things like that. So dogs in that situation need a lower protein diet. So liver, kidney, urinary stone issues, lower protein diet. And in fact, one of my Corgis a long time ago was on a low protein diet and related to his DM and things. And I don't think my sister and I would have done that if it were not 1993 and we didn't know what we were doing. So protein can actually be too much for your dog. So like I was saying, you need tryptophan in your dog's diet and your own. I know certainly years ago I used to take tryptophan to help mitigate migraines. And I know when I had a migraine, I was pretty crabby. So tryptophan can be an important thing. And it's important in your dog to help reduce compulsive behaviors, improve sleep, and improve appetite, memory, learning. The more tryptophan we have, the less anxiety and less depression we have. So, there are 2 drugs now being used to increase serotonin levels in dogs. One of my friends has got her dog on dog Prozac to try to reduce the level of barking, which is continuous all day long in an apartment complex. This is not allowed dogs. That's a big problem. And if that dog does not shut up, she will be evicted. She couldn't even try herbal things because she had to go straight to a drug to get the dog to shut up, or she would have lost her housing within a week. It's really terrible, even though the dog is a service dog. So, and it's important to make sure your dog has enough tryptophan, which is, in fact, as I said, in a lot of carbohydrates. So a low protein diet would be a dog that's fed like 17% protein. And then a dog that's fed a high protein diet would be more than that. And it's hard to figure out what that is in terms of your dog and his size and what you're feeding. But, if you see a brand of food that says for working dogs, for lactating dogs, breeding dogs, puppies, there's usually higher protein in those foods. If it says senior dogs, usually lower protein. So if you've got issues with behavior in your dog, you might be able to just switch to a lower protein diet. And if you're doing home cooking, just add more things that don't have as much protein, like brown rice and vegetables. Although I'm not a huge fan of too much rice for a dog. But, you can use oatmeal. Oatmeal is loaded with tryptophan, so that's a good thing. So you don't want just corn. You want good fiber, like nuts and oats and bananas, root vegetables, beans, as opposed to insoluble fibers, because that can also create some problems in your dogs. So think about the protein level when you're giving your dogs their food if you've got behavior problems. Now, there are also some products that are drugs to improve parts of the brain that are related to calming. They affect what we call the GABA receptors in the brain. That's another thing that can help reduce anxiety in your dog. It's a little different than the mechanism for serotonin. And there's a thing called a Calm diet that Royal Canin made. It's CALM, just like Calm. It's a Royal Canin diet. I don't necessarily support or not support that as a food, but if you've got a dog with serious behavior issues, you might consider adding that to your diet in a small amount. Make it half and half what you're making for your dog or something like that. So in terms of the blood sugar spikes that we see in humans, in your dogs, back in the day, we fed our dogs 1 meal a day at dinner time. I mean, it's making me crazy now when I see somebody just throw a bunch of kibble in the bowl and give the 5-year-old a star on the calendar because he dumped kibble in the bowl for a dog. That is not what our dogs need to be eating, and that's not teaching the kid enough about food or the dog. It's just not a good thing. So, and doing that once a day, what's happening to your dog the rest of the day? I mean, he gets a whole bunch of food, then he wants to sleep, then he wakes up, and then he's starving all night and all the next day. So I don't think very many people I know do not feed their dogs twice a day at this point, but I feed my dog twice a day, and I make sure he's got something at lunch to feel like he's had not a meal, but something. Tristan he has to do his tricks at lunchtime so he can get lots of treats. Sometimes I give him whatever I'm eating if it's not all vegetables, since this kid will not eat a vegetable. He ate lettuce the other day. I was amazed. It really seems to be the only vegetable that he'll willingly eat if it's in his dinner. He doesn't spit it out like he does everything else. And certainly, lots of dogs, like my other corgis, have eaten a whole bunch of whatever vegetables. Like I make them a salad when I'm making my salad at lunch, and that's been helpful. So even adding a third meal to the dog's diet, if you can be helpful if you're with them. Now, so many of us leave for work in the morning and don't come home till the evening. So make sure, at least in that case, you're feeding your dog twice a day. Now, I know some people who don't get home from work till late at night, and their dogs are eating dinner at like 9 p.m. That's okay if they're eating breakfast at 9 a.m. But if you're feeding them at 5, 6 a.m. and then not till 9, 12 hours is a good rule of thumb. My dogs usually eat at 6 in the morning and they eat dinner at like 5. And a lot of people I know are teachers, so again, they're feeding their dogs pretty early. So that's another thing that can help with the blood sugar going up and down. And a lot of treats do have a lot of grain in them, and that can help calm your dog as well. And maybe we should have a whole talk about treats. I am not a huge expert on quality of treats. I know the ones on my sister's website are generally good quality treats, and that there's a bazillion crappy treats in the world. That doesn't mean they don't taste good, right, Tristan? So think about your dog's blood sugar levels and think about whether he's on a high protein diet, if he's having trouble adjusting. And remember what happens to you when you eat turkey. You feel very relaxed and happy. And also what happens when you eat something stimulating like chocolate. You're very excitable and can't focus and can't concentrate. So when you're training your dog, you want to feed him things to calm him, but not to make him so calm he wants to curl up with the football game and sit there for 3 hours digesting his turkey. And my dog eats a lot of turkey. So it's really important to me to remember that right after he eats his breakfast, which is when he gets the most turkey, is not a good time to ask him to think. And sadly, when we go to dog school, it is in the morning. At 9, not that long after we've eaten breakfast. So I have to work a little harder to get him aroused emotionally so that he can do his work. I have to play with him. I have to bring the squeakies out. I have to run around. I have to be very perky in my voice and with his reward words so that he knows that we're really doing something fun. And then I can get him off the sofa and get him away from the football game to enjoy dog school with me. So everybody have a great day. What is today? Thursday. I think we'll be back tomorrow. I don't know about Saturday. I am just so busy in the mornings these days. It's kind of a good thing, but kind of bad for trying to get these in. Right, Tristan? Your breath is much better today. Oh, we've been going through those dental drops. Somehow he spits them out every once in a while. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.